Hey gang, are you ready to upgrade your denim game for the fall? Our friends at Mott & Bow handcraft premium quality jeans. I'm wearing my pair right now, literally, and I gotta say, they're unbelievably soft. I've never had a pair of jeans that were so comfortable without having to break them in. And Mott & Bow has a free try-on program. You get 2 sizes to try at home, keep the one that fits, send the other one back for free. These jeans are already priced under market because they cut out all the retail markups, but the deal's even better when you go to mottandbow.com and use promo code Harris for 20% off. That's MOTTANDBOW.com, promo code Harris. Now let's get to the show.
It's the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
All right. Woo, let's go. Finally. Hey, I am Chris Harris. This is the Harris Football Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. It's Thursday. It's time. Steelers, Pats, tonight. Kicks it all off. Don't forget to submit your lineup after all of this. Please, you have Steelers, you have Pats in your lineup. Make sure you submit them. Tonight I'm going to do an hour Q&A with you about your fantasy teams. Follow me on Twitter at Harris Football, and then at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to tweet out a link to a YouTube page where you'll see me live answering your questions. Don't forget, write it down. Come ask me stuff. Have fun. Yay.
Today's kickoff.
On today's show, I'll talk about the news of the day, injury guys for week 1, situations that are in the news and are probably making your lineup decisions a living hell. Hello, Cowboys backfield. We'll have a Thursday night preview from a fantasy perspective. We'll have a song, a really good song. And then our DFS expert, Craig Clark, will join us to talk about putting together your week 1 entry to make you some money. Speaking of money, we're proud to have BetDSI.com as a sponsor. They're my online sportsbook. They should be yours too. One of the original online books. They've been around 16 years. They're known actually for helping set the lines for sports events like tonight and are dedicated to being accessible. A website that's always up, company that always pays when you want your winnings. BetDSI gets an A+ on many sportsbook reviews and is known for being a place where pros play as well as amateurs like yours truly. Go to BetDSI.com right now and set up an account and use the promo code Harris10, and within a few hours you'll get $10 for free put into your account to play with. Heck, you can play the Steelers-Patriots game where BetDSI has New England favored by 7. If you're looking for a place to play, go to BetDSI.com now and use promo code Harris, no space, the number 10. That's BetDSI.com, promo code Harris10.
Injury news.
As of this recording, I took 2 guys out of my week 1 ranks based on injuries, Mike Evans and Trey Mason, both of whom have bad hamstrings, and that's not to say either guy is definitely out. We absolutely could hear that either one of them has practice Thursday or Friday, or they could even wind up active on Sunday without practicing at all. But my theory tends to be, neither guy's been able to practice to this point, so I think it's helpful to show you where I'd rank their replacements if they really do miss the game. I pushed Vincent Jackson up about 10 slots in my receiver ranks. He's now 13th for me in standard scoring, 16th for me in a PPR. Obviously, very attractive with no Mike Evans in there. Lewis Murphy would presumably be the number 2 receiver if Evans is out. He doesn't factor into my ranks. I guess I could see the argument that, he's super cheap in DFS, so maybe he could make sense as the last guy on your team on 1 ticket in a millionaire maker type pool. As for Mason's likely replacement, if he's really out, well, that's Benny Cunningham. I didn't move him up really at all. I know Cam Chancellor sounds like he probably won't play because of his holdout for the Seahawks defense. There's definitely danger, assuming that a defense will always stay the same from year to year until we see them play. It's dangerous, which is why When I'm giving advice, I'm not telling you to take that Seahawks defense because you have to take them too early. All that said, this still feels like kind of a bad matchup for the Rams running game. I look at that St. Louis offensive line. I don't think it's impossible that they could get their act together in 2015, but until I see it, it's enough questionable personnel. I'm probably not going to believe it until I see it. So Cunningham stays at number 40 for me in standard, even with no Trey Mason. Number 38 for me in a PPR. Probably not interested, no matter the format, despite what could be a man-sized workload. Now, if you've been thinking about trying DraftKings.com, you're listening to the right show. Every Thursday, Craig Clark and I are going to make our picks and give you advice about putting together your team. How does DraftKings work? It's like fantasy football on demand. You're given a salary cap. Every week you put together a new team, new players. You get to pick new guys every week. You fit them all under the cap. You can play one week. You can not play the next. And you can win real honest-to-goodness cash. No more waiting until week 16 to get paid. I play at DraftKings every single week, not for big stakes because I'm kind of a wimp, but I do think it's a fun complement to my regular fantasy leagues. So I hope you'll try it out. If you go to DraftKings.com right now and enter offer code Harris, you'll be helping out the little podcast that could. Plus, I happen to think you'll open yourself up to another way to enjoy Sundays, and they'll give you a free basic level entry to play in week 1. So do it now, DraftKings.com, offer code Harris. Let's look at some more injury issues. But on the good side of the ledger, Alshon Jeffrey, technically listed as limited in Wednesday's practice, but widely expected to be good to go with his calf injury. As I said yesterday, I don't have him as a top 10 receiver this week, but he's only just outside my top 10, like number 14, and he's got to be in your lineup. Of course, there's risk. There's also tons of reward with Alshon. I know I'm going to use him on the team that I own him. LaShawn McCoy told reporters he might not be 100%, but he's going to play week 1 against the Colts. And what do we say when players tell reporters things? Nothing, because we ignore it. I'm not saying I know for sure that Shady is fine. I'm just saying that players have absolutely no incentive to tell the truth. All I know is that if McCoy's active, he's out there for me this weekend, even with the hamstring risk. Yes, of course it could blow up. It can always blow up. That's fantasy. But I do think you play him. Duke Johnson cleared from his concussion, though that doesn't automatically mean he'll play Sunday. The Browns have apparently been flirting with Monte Ball. And by the way, please, Monte, please pick a better place. That would be helpful. They also signed Sean Drone in Cleveland to their practice squad. Duke Johnson, still a nice guy to own, even in a PPR in week 1. Boy, feels like a little too much unknown, to me anyway, to feel great about using him. Certainly going to be watching. Zach Ertz, reportedly been cleared after his sports hernia surgery. But again, we don't know what kind of shape he's in, right? I mean, he's essentially, he had surgery. He was out most of August. We don't even really know whether he's going to play week 1 or in what capacity, and it's a Monday night game. I think, it's probably an easy decision that's made for you, although there are 2 games Monday night, so you could look at, Kyle Rudolph or Vernon Davis in that late game. If you really wanted to rely on Ertz and either Rudolph or Davis is available in your league, I guess you could wait for Monday. I think I'm probably avoiding him for week 1. Michael Floyd could play against the Saints on Sunday after missing most of August with badly fractured fingers. Apparently it was I'm going to classify this, it was a grody injury. It was grody to the max. What that's going to do, Floyd's possibility of playing Sunday, is make life a little more miserable for John Brown and or Larry Fitzgerald owners, because we probably don't want to wait for the late game to throw Floyd out there not knowing at all what he's capable of doing. Even if he winds up being active, we're not going to know that in advance. This is, though, a reason to be just a tiny bit muted about Brown and Fitz. They're a little artificially low in my wide receiver ranks this week, given the matchup against the Saints. But, yeah, I guess of all the things we don't know, this is one of them. I probably would not be able to take a risk on Floyd this week. And let's wrap it up with a non-injury thing. The Cowboys running back situation. Hooray! If this thing isn't already threatening to give you an aneurysm, you're a better person than I am. We had dueling websites on Wednesday offering dueling reports on the expected hierarchy of running backs Sunday night for the Cowboys in a tasty-looking matchup against the Giants. All right, so first someone comes out and says, oh, Darren McFadden's the starter. He might have unlimited workload, all the work he could possibly handle. And of course, Twitter goes bananas. And then another site comes out and says, Jason Garrett hasn't made any decisions about the backfield. It sure sounds like a platoon to us. Ugh. I wish I could just grab the NFL reporting community by the scruff of the neck, like a parent cat grabbing kittens, and tell them all to just stop with this. Why would Dallas tell the truth here? Why? Why would they go, hey, New York Giants, here's what we got in mind? This is all speculation, folks. This is all some reporters reading tea leaves or interpreting the farts and whistles or being fed misinformation. Could McFadden be the starter? Yup. Could Randall be the starter? Yup. Could it be a platoon where nobody gets enough work to be assured of being a fantasy starter? Yup. As yummy as the situation looks, as good as that offensive line is, this is a hold scenario for me. Keep whatever running backs from Dallas you got. Stay away from week 1 if you can afford to, and we'll regroup on Monday and look at the tape, and we'll decide stuff. Until then, just stop. Stop. Just stop.
Thursday night preview.
So the leading question on my Twitter feed Thursday morning, at Harris Football, was weather in New England. It's going to be bad. Oh no. Tom Brady or Derek Carr? All I know is it's September. It's going to be warm. It might rain. It's not going to be that windy. And regardless, generally speaking, we're terrible at guessing what extreme weather conditions mean for offensive skill position players, unless it's extreme wind, and then we have a good sense. But it's not going to be extreme wind on Thursday night. Sometimes a rainy game winds up with huge point totals. Do not change your strategy based on weather. Please. All right, so who'll be missing from Steelers-Patriots. No Le'Veon Bell, no Martavis Bryant, no LeGarrette Blount, no Brandon LaFell. Both teams without their starting centers for a good long while. Both teams have questions at running back for week 1. For me, most interesting guy of the night is going to be D'Angelo Williams. If you listened to Wednesday's show, you heard Sigmund Bloom give an impassioned defense of using D. Willie on all your teams based on the game flow and the role for Williams that he expects. And he could be right, and that's why Sig has Williams rated 13th among running backs, which is really high. I have him just outside my top 30, which obviously is on the other extreme. It's really low. My explanation, I said it yesterday, I'm scared that the Steelers might just decide we're not running against these guys. Secondary's a mess in New England. It's time to throw. Again, that's not really about me guessing at game flow, but it's a backup player. I have to allow for the possibility the Steelers don't think all that much of Williams. Might Dre Archer get carries like he did in the preseason, or might they simply have 11 rushing attempts all night without Le'Veon Bell? Antonio Brown, all in, my number 1 receiver of the week. Marcus Wheaton, thought about it more, bumped him up inside my top 24 receivers. Heath Miller, borderline starter, all leagues. D'Angelo Williams, I'm stuck. And the reason I'm stuck is, again, I don't want to anticipate game flow too much because we don't know. We don't know what they're going to do. I still think Williams probably has his long speed, even at age 32. You saw flashes of it on tape last year. But I thought his cutting ability, which used to be among the best in the NFL, had pretty much left him as of 2014. It doesn't mean if he gets a great big hole, he can't burst for a 40-yard touchdown and make your night. There's real upside there for Williams in terms of workload. There could be a big workload there for him. I'm just finding myself a little bit paranoid about D. Willie tonight. And in the Patriots backfield, man, They make D'Angelo Williams look like Mr. Stability. I think the favor that the Patriots do us is that rather than leak a million different conflicting reports about their backfield to a million different reporters, they just say nothing, and we're left totally in the dark. It's not like that's really technically any better, I admit that, but at least there's less noise. So with LeGarrette Blount out, is it going to be Brandon Bolden, Dion Lewis, James White? Nobody knows. I think this is almost mercifully opaque. Probably there aren't a lot of fantasy owners out there stressing about it. Just sit them all until we get some clarity. Big Ben, yup. Brady, yup. Edelman, interesting. Didn't play the whole preseason, but the Pats only kept 4 receivers. So I assume Julian Edelman is raring to go, and I've got him locked in a starting role in pretty much all fantasy situations. Danny Amendola, well, again, only 4 receivers, so maybe the guy we saw playing really well in the Super Bowl is going to be back in business again. And he could have been hurt last year during the regular season, but boy, I saw him flop so hard for so long last year. For me, I think he has to prove it before I'm ready to believe in Danny Amendola again for fantasy.
Harris's music digression.
Today's digression comes from a Wisconsin band called Tenement. Their latest album is called Predatory Highlights. It's really good. It's out on Don Giovanni Records. Really recommend you checking out that record and their 2 earlier ones. Thank you very much to Tenement for giving us permission to use a taste of this song. The song is called Crop Circle Nation.
Today's guest.
And today's guest is Craig Clark, our daily fantasy sports expert. You can follow him on Twitter at PCClark59. Craig, how are you? Getting ready for week 1? You getting psyched?
Yeah, I'm getting really psyched. And I'm listening to your podcast every day. It's the comfort food of my afternoon, and I really enjoy it.
Well, thank you very much. And now you are a big part of it because finally we're underway. And so Craig will be on every week, and we're going to talk about strategy for DFS, and we're also going to mostly dwell on our picks. So, Craig, I had you on a couple of times over the course of August to just start whetting our appetites for DraftKings and for FanDuel. And we talked some theory. And so, I want to recap a little bit some theory about how to think about roster construction, because I know there are a lot of listeners who, thank you very much, listeners who are listening and have heard our DraftKings ads and have signed up and are kind of assembling their very first teams. So there are a couple of different ways you can play on these daily fantasy sports sites. You can play for the big money. You can play in those general prize pools, the GPPs, where you're trying to become a millionaire or win thousands of dollars by finishing at the very, very tippity top of a giant pool. And you can also play pools where the rewards are a lot lower, but your odds are a lot better, which is more like, heads up or 50-50, something like that. So I wanted to start with kind of the differences in mindset in assembling a team between the two. So if you're thinking about week 1, before we even get to specific players, what's the mindset you have if you're going into a GPP?
I'm willing to take a little more risk.
Yeah, it's about risk, right?
And, some of the players are very expensive. and if they're the best player, you still have to pay for them.
Huh.
So Odell Beckham, I've mentioned a little bit. He's very expensive. He's hard to justify in a lot of ways, but sure his matchup looked wonderful. And if you take him, that means you're going to have to take players at the cheap end who have a lot of risk too. So you're basically taking on a whole bunch of risk.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, I would look at somebody like Beckham who's expensive, and I would think he doesn't have a lot of risk. I think he's going to produce, but you're basically saying the risk is relative to his price, because if he flames out, he absolutely ruins your team because you paid so much for him.
Yeah, he hurts you a lot.
Right.
He hurts you a lot. So you're hoping he gets some of those days he had at the end of last year.
Yeah. And so what's different about the mindset if instead of doing the, millionaire maker type contests, instead you're going to do, say, a 50-50 where the idea is, okay, out of 500 people or whatever, all I have to do is finish in the top half and I double my money. What's the difference in mindset there?
I don't want to take risk on any player.
Okay.
So that means you can't afford some of the higher dollar players, especially the first board of the DraftKings wide receivers, that first 10 players or whatever. They cost too much. So I take players that I think are going to definitely score some. Jordan Matthews, I think he's pretty safe this week to score. And he's a lot cheaper than Odell Beckham. And that allows me to not take a risk on my flex, not take a risk on my running back.
Well, I have at the end of our interview, I'm going to talk about my 50-50 entry, and I think you're going to scoff at it because I don't think I adhere to this rule. But so you wrote a piece for our daily fantasy sports blog that we're maintaining at harrisfootball.com. That it's up there now, and people can read it in detail. But we're going to talk about it a little bit here. And you talked about 3 steps to sort of thinking about players for your roster creation. And the first step is you're trying to find players. This is really about GPP. This is about winning the millionaire maker, right?
Right.
You're trying to find the players who are going to be on every winning ticket. And you hinted already about what kind of player that is, but you're essentially, am I right in saying you're starting by evaluating the expensive players, the very expensive?
Yes, evaluating the expensive players, looking at them, think, are you going to explode, right? Are you going to go for a whole lot of points this week? And if you have that feeling in your gut and you're like looking at them, and I talk Odell, like, are you going to do it? It's that game is very high profile. It's high definition. I could really see him doing it. And if he does, you have to have him.
Right, because he'll be on so many teams. The expensive guys are going to be on a lot of teams. So you have to have the right expensive guys is basically what you're saying. Yeah. All right, so that's you start there, and we're going to talk about specific players for week 1 in a second. But that's where you start. Step 2 for you in the piece on harrisfootball.com, you mentioned finding players who can or might be on some winning tickets. Don't necessarily have to be on all of them, but who you can imagine being on some of them. And I think by this, do you mean you're finding guys who give you good value?
Good value, but also they can't flame out, right?
Okay.
They can't suck. So you can't take a guy that is such a flyer, that you have such a low percentage chance of them hitting. So you really have to find guys. Good value is a good way to say it, but you got to get points.
Okay. So, my counter to that week 1 last year would have been Allen Hurns. Allen Hurns would have won you money last year if you'd picked a lot of other good guys. Right. So why shouldn't I, and I think I know the answer to this, but why shouldn't I, said the straw man, try to find this season's week 1 Allen Hurns?
Well, there's 200 of those to choose from.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's why it's a straw man, because we don't trust in our ability to actually locate Allen Hurns' one fluky week, right? Yeah.
Right. And he was only good a couple weeks, and there was only really one Allen Hurns in week 1.
Right. So
Kevin
Ogletree a few years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, and if you're picking Allen Hurns in week 1 last year, you're probably also taking Blake Bortles, so.
Which wouldn't have gone as well. Right. All right. So step 3 for you is you're locating the artificially deflated players, not Deflategate players, the artificially deflated salary cap players for week 1, players where the market hasn't yet adjusted, right? Their situations are not baked into their salary cap price yet. You mentioned a guy like Devontae Adams, whose price for week 1 was set before Jordy Nelson got hurt. Alfred Blue, same thing with Aaron Foster. Amir Abdullah, didn't have as big a role in the offense projected for him. So your point is that these names are going to be on a lot of GPP entries, and therefore you have to make a decision about whether you want them on your entry as well. Tell me about that decision.
Yeah, you can't just gloss over them, say, I'm not taking him or I am taking him. You really have to think about him. You have to decide whether you're with him or against him. And Davante Adams is even artificially, well, I don't know about artificially, but he's really cheap for being artificially deflated. The FanDuel price is not nearly as lucrative as the DraftKings price.
So what's the FanDuel price relative to $60,000 salary cap?
In terms of percentage, it's similar, but FanDuel has a higher floor, and the spread is a lot tighter in FanDuel, so you're not getting as big a bargain.
But the value on Adams, what's Adams' price on DraftKings?
$4,400.
Yeah, that's low for a $50,000 salary cap.
Yeah, it's really low compared to higher receivers.
Yeah. All right. So the point is that we recommend that you're recommending that before you ever make a team, go through the full list, either on FanDuel or on DraftKings, and find everyone who you think that's artificially deflated because it's just mathematically the reality is not right. The reality hasn't been baked into those players' prices yet. They will be going forward. Davante Adams won't be as cheap next week or the week after.
Right, and they will have higher percentage ownership.
Right,
because when they get into the 30-40% ownership range, they really move the market.
Right. And so the point is that once you've made that list, and we gave you three of guys who we see, Davante Adams, Alfred Blue, Amir Abdullah, there are others. Once you make that list, Craig's point is that the decision that you have to make on them is not just, do I want them? It's if I don't want them, I have to realize I'm actually making a bet against them. Right?
Yes. Yeah, you're betting against them. You're specifically betting against them, and you need them to do poorly.
Right.
It's great if they don't do well because they take down a whole swath of tickets. I mean, they really, really hurt a bunch of teams if you decide against them. And Davante Adams has risk. So
yeah, his risk is named James Jones.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think James Jones could surprise us all, and maybe he's artificially low too because he wasn't on the Packers when these prices were set. Yeah. But the point is that these guys are going to be on so many tickets in the Millionaire Maker that you either have to have them on your team because you want to neutralize everyone else's selection of them, or you want to actively think, I don't think these guys are going to live up to it.
Yeah, you want Amir Abdullah to just catch punts.
Right. Okay, so that gives us a good way to start thinking about assembling our teams. Probably going forward, each Thursday we're not going to spend this much time on theory, on how to assemble, but I know we have a lot of new players, and so we wanted to do that up front. So let's talk about week one. Okay. Our show is sponsored by DraftKings, and you and I both play on DraftKings for our personal selves. So, I think our heads are more in DraftKings, but we also know we have listeners who play FanDuel, so we're going to try to give some equal opportunity. And therefore, we're going to talk FanDuel prices as well as DraftKings, although you're right, FanDuel prices tend to be a little less spread out.
Yeah, they're a little more consistent, too.
From week to week.
Or at least
among positions.
Among positions, FanDuel seems to be a little more conservative in their pricing. Right. DraftKings has really got some boomer bust stuff in there.
Right.
With the pricing.
So let's talk. We've talked about tent poles in the past, and that's really sort of category one that we were talking about. You could call them. You could call them pricey guys. You can call them tent pole guys. These are the superstars. How about a few players in week one that you think qualify as superstars, expensive players, who you will use across multiple entries?
Yeah, and I've built 6 or 7 entries now, and I'm going to build a few more. And I cannot not take C.J. Anderson.
C.J. Anderson's on all of them.
He's on all of them.
He's your 9 guy. He's your 9 out of 9.
He's 9 out of 9, right? I haven't been able to justify not taking him on either format, FanDuel or DraftKings. So he's so far been my top guy.
Number one tent pole. Any other names that people can be thinking of that you like?
Well, I like Dez.
Dez, yeah.
I do. Dez is expensive on DraftKings, so if you're looking for a 50-50, he might hurt a little more.
You're going to laugh at me when I get to my 50-50, man.
Yeah, you like Dez. But on my number one ticket where I'm trying to build the superstars and the scrubs,
yep.
He's my first choice.
Dez is. Even over C.J. Anderson, but they're both on there.
Oh yeah, they're both
Yeah.
on there, and I have Odell on that as well.
Okay.
I basically try to get everybody, so I'm really looking for some cheap guys. Normally, I would advise against that. Trying to hit on a $3,000 player, or Richard Rodgers is $2,500 at DraftKings.
Yeah.
He looks so cheap, and I could just see him getting no points.
So we'll get to those cheap guys. So there's a few ideas of tent poles. You're going to build multiple entries for a GPP around. Are there any potential tent poles in DraftKings you think aren't necessarily great for FanDuel, or vice versa? Or do you tend to think, these guys are just good in all formats?
Well, the wide receivers in FanDuel aren't as valuable.
Really?
So I mean, they don't have they're half point PPR instead of a full point.
That's on FanDuel, right?
On FanDuel, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I think you said FanDuel. I'm just really dumb.
I don't know what I said, but so you really have to balance it a little bit more towards running backs.
Okay.
And the pricing does reflect that. So the running backs are more expensive at FanDuel.
All right.
But so you need to think of a more balanced way with FanDuel than you do with DraftKings. You really want the pass catchers at DraftKings.
Yeah, because of full PPR. All right. So then, how about some ideas for players who you think are, they're not the stars. You think they're probably valued fairly, but they're a little on the cheaper side that you can fill in the rest of your lineups who you think have some upside. Give me a list of like 4 or 5 guys.
So you mean like middle price?
Yeah,
guys?
middle price guys.
Jordan Matthews, I like in a lot of different ways to play. I like Steve Smith. I like Jarvis Landry.
Yeah. I nailed one. I got one. You're going to be proud of me there. Woo!
Jarvis Landry's going to catch a lot of balls, right?
That's what I'm saying. PPR, I'll take it.
Even somebody like Jeremy Maclin. I mean, everybody brings him up and says, "Oh, the KC scored no wide receiver touchdowns," right?
Yeah.
But he's going to catch a ton of balls, and he's going to have a ton of yards, and he might
score a
find the end
touchdown.
zone.
How about any running backs who fit that category who are in that? I think you mentioned Chris Ivory as someone you think is probably fairly valued given what he's done in the past and given the unpredictability of the team. But I know you have him on one of your main entries, right?
I do. Chris Ivory. He's not just fairly valued; he's cheap.
Oh, okay.
He's cheap, and he's good. He's a nice safe pick too, I think, because he's going to get a lot of carries.
Yeah.
So he's a nice guy. He ends up on a lot of my entries as well. I don't want to take him on every one. I'm just a little nervous about him, but his price is so nice, it's hard not to take.
All right, so let's talk about some of those artificially deflated players. We talked about what that is. So I'm just going to rattle off a few names, and you tell me yay or nay. You either want to bet on them because you know they're going to be on a bunch of teams, no matter whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel, or nay, meaning you're going to bet against them, either DraftKings or FanDuel. So Devontae Adams.
I'm taking him.
You're
going with him.
You're betting on him. So you're basically trying to neutralize all the other people who are taking Devontae Adams by taking him yourself.
Right, and I'm trying to get higher priced players at my other positions.
Right. Alfred Blue, how about him? Yay or nay?
I'm staying away.
Okay, so he's a nay, even though he's artificially deflated. That this is proof that not everyone who you think is cheap relative to what their role will be is a definite play. How about Abdullah?
He scares me too much. I'm not taking him.
Okay. How about Danny Woodhead? 3,700 on DraftKings. He's 6,000 on FanDuel, so I think he's it's a $10,000 higher cap on FanDuel, but that doesn't seem as good a value to me. But 3,700 on DraftKings, that seems low. That's broken leg low.
He's possible.
Yeah.
I think you got to root for touchdowns with him. Catching the ball and getting in the end zone, on a nice screen or something. But I haven't put him on any of my cards, but he's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think PPR on DraftKings, I'll take 5 catches. You know what I mean? I feel like you're right though. That might be a little bit more of a 50-50 play because maybe the upside isn't there. Here's one for FanDuelers. Marvin Jones.
Yeah, he's minimum priced.
Yeah, 45
minimum priced on FanDuelers.
Yeah.
So if you're really going for the boom or bust, he's a good choice.
Yeah, I mean it seems like boomer bust is kind of what you're thinking for a GPP. So he's somebody who I probably would fill in as an ultra cheap guy if I was maybe less so on DraftKings. There are a lot of cheaper options, but FanDuel I like Marvin Jones. All right, so you gave me one starting ticket that you're going to play in a GPP on DraftKings this weekend. Yeah. In other words, I'll read it off because I got it right here. In other words, Craig is shooting for a home run for a GPP with this squad. Sam Bradford at quarterback, C.J. Anderson, Chris Ivory, Dez Bryant, Randall Cobb, and I assume that means because you couldn't afford Odell Beckham.
I couldn't afford Odell Beckham. I needed $1,200 more.
Right. Devontae Adams, you mentioned, Owen Daniels, John Brown as the flex, and the Dolphins defense.
Yeah.
All right. So, and that team that Craig is starting his entries with is on harrisfootball.com on the DFS blog. So don't feel like you have to pull over to the side of the road and scribble names. So tell me, in this group, am I correct that I'm interpreting tent poles here? Dez, C.J. Anderson, and Randall Cobb, are they tent poles across multiple entries?
Yeah, he's all three of them are in multiple entries of mine. Cobb is my next choice, my second page of the board. He's not really second page; it's kind of like the lower half of the first board.
Okay.
But when I can't get the really expensive guy that I want,
Cobb is the fill-in. Beckham is the one you want. So your tent poles ideally are going to be Dez, Beckham, and C.J. Anderson.
That's right.
So if you can afford them, they're going to be on all your tickets.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now I will be your Huckleberry.
Okay.
I will probably do one entry into the Millionaire Maker. I am simply not as hardcore as you are. I am risk averse in my life. So I'm probably not going to do multiple entries. So I'm probably not good to go by there. However, I am going to play some 50-50s. And I've already entered one. As Craig talked about earlier, my goal here is to be a little bit more consistent. However, I think he's going to see my team and say, dude, that's not very consistent. My goal here was to not shoot for the moon, but to take players who I thought were steady. And I did start out with Bryant and Beckham on my 50-50 squad, thinking they're going to be on a bunch of teams, and I feel like they're going to get me something, and I saw enough value in other players where I felt like I could afford them. Is that dumb?
Well, I don't think it's that dumb in general. I mean, they're going to score, hopefully. You're just taking on more risk with other players if you're just trying to win the 50-50.
But I love the rest of the guys so much. I found so much value. Maybe that's the sucker bet, but Beckham. My original entry didn't have Beckham on it. It did have Dez on it. And I went back to last year, like you said, the second half of last year. I won so many of those 50-50s just by having Beckham on there. And I feel like there's institutional memory. That's just going to be the fact that a lot of people are going to have Beckham on there. And it felt like to me it came down to I either needed to bet on him or bet against him, because if I didn't bet on him, he was going to be on so many rosters that essentially I was predicting a bad game against the Cowboys.
Right.
I don't think he's going to have a bad game against the Cowboys. I think he's going to have a good one.
And week one does have all these opportunities to take cheap players.
Right. Okay, so my team is built around Dez and Beckham, and I'm making room for Jarvis Landry because, again, PPR, so Landry's on there.
Okay.
I took Bradford also. I took Ivory also. This is independent of your entry. This was before you had your entry.
It's scary. That means maybe all the Sharps are going to have these guys, right?
Bradford and Ivory both look cheap to me. I have Doug Martin.
Yeah, Doug Martin's a good guy to have. He's nicely priced.
Right, nicely priced. And essentially I had to downgrade from a better running back to Martin in order to afford Beckham because I decided that I needed to have Beckham. I have Jordan Reed at tight end because, I assume he's healthy for the first half of week one.
Yeah, some of these guys you got to get this week.
Right, while they're not dead. John Brown as my flex. He's my number one flag player of the year. I do not feel like, against the Saints, I do not feel like he's fairly valued right now.
Yeah, on DraftKings he's so cheap.
Yeah.
On FanDuel he's not a good deal, but on DraftKings he's cheap.
And I took the Texans D for whatever that's worth. I mean, mostly it was like, don't take Seattle's D because it's, 25% more expensive than all the rest of them. That's not a good bet. So in my list that I just gave you, is there anything there that interests you or, makes you think, good job, maybe less? Okay, we talked about Dez and Odell, leave me alone, but for the rest of them, you approve?
Yeah, I like them all. I mean, I don't like a single. I don't not like a single guy. I'm scared of all the tight ends. I really am.
Right.
I could see every single one of them practically getting no points.
Is that an argument to take Jimmy Graham? Say.
I don't think you're going to get justification for taking him.
Right.
If he explodes, obviously you do.
Right.
But I'm worried he's only going to be so-so.
Right. And he's already super expensive, so his upside is already baked into his price, which is why you and I both stayed away from him.
Yeah.
How about Jarvis Landry? Is he less appealing to you if you're playing on FanDuel because it's a half-point PPR, or do you feel like, I'll take it because I think he gets 8 or 9 catches anyway, and so fine, it's not 8 or 9 points, but it's still 4.5 points, and that's quite useful.
He's absolutely less appealing to me on FanDuel.
Okay.
Yeah, that half point, it's going to matter.
Yeah.
It's going to matter across the board on all the players.
Yep.
It improves running backs. It hurts wide receivers.
Yep. All right, Craig. Well, this has been fun, and thank you for being here. We'll talk to you next Thursday, and in the meantime, I hope folks will ask Craig for some DFS advice. He's open for business.
I am. I'm not a great responder, but I'm trying to get better.
Yeah, you are. You're gonna get better. I can tell. I think it's time to pummel Craig at PC Clark 59. That's at PC Clark 59. Hit him up with your questions for week 1, and he's gonna get better at responding. Thanks for doing it, Craig.
All right, I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
That's our show. Hey, remember to up your denim game by going to mottandbow.com. I really don't think I could ever buy mass-produced shopping mall jeans ever again. These jeans are just too comfortable. And use our offer code Harris and you'll get 20% off. mottandbow.com, offer code Harris. And don't forget, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Thursday night, check my Twitter feed at Harris Football for a link to a live video chat. Fun times. Hope you enjoy the game tonight, and I'll be back tomorrow with Cousin Josh. Talk to you then.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The end theme is Tooth and Claw by OU Villain. Subscribe to the Harris Football Podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.